Hello again. Welcome back. For the benefit of all, I'm addressing Mark today. Mark, I want to thank you for your recent comments on the channel. You brought a laundry list of futurist suppositions that many in the church today take as absolute gospel truth. Specifically, you asked, quote, what about the Holy Spirit being removed to make way for the Antichrist? Are we still here if the Holy Spirit resides in us? End quote. Now, this is a foundational pillar of modern dispensationalism, the idea that the Holy Spirit is the restrainer of Second Thessalonians and must be taken out of the way before the Great Tribulation can begin. But today, I want to challenge that assumption. We're going to look at what the text actually says, what Jesus taught about the Spirit, and the historical reality Paul's audience was actually living through. So first, let's look at the identity of the restrainer. Many automatically assume it's the Holy Spirit because who else could restrain global evil? However, when Jesus explained the Holy Spirit's role to the apostles in John 16, he spoke of the Spirit as comforter, as guide, and as a convictor of sin. He said nothing about the Spirit's role being a restrainer of political evil who eventually abandons the world. In fact, the idea that the Spirit is removed creates a massive theological problem. Now, how could anyone be saved during a tribulation if the very person who convicts and regenerates the heart is gone? Now, the Bible doesn't say the Spirit leaves, it says he stays with us forever. So if it's not the Holy Spirit, who or what was restraining the mystery of lawlessness in the first century? Well, with the help of scholars like Kurt Simmons, we find a much more solid explanation rooted in history. When Paul wrote to the Thessalonians, he told them they knew what was withholding the man of sin. He was speaking of a contemporary reality. In the mid-first century, the Roman Emperor Claudius sat on the throne. Now, history shows us that Claudius extended the protection of Roman law to the early church. Look at Acts 18. Magistrates like Gallio refused to entertain Jewish complaints against Paul and Christians, treating it as a religious dispute rather than a crime. As long as Claudius was in power, the four winds of heaven were effectively restrained. There was a level of political stability that allowed the gospel at that time to spread. But Paul knew that this was temporary. Paul mentions that this restrainer would be taken out of the way, and in the Greek, this can simply mean he would be removed from his position. In 54 AD, Claudius was poisoned and died. So who stepped into the vacuum? It was Nero. Now, this is the wicked one, the early church recognized. Early Christian writers like Victorinus explicitly connected the beast and the man of sin to the Roman Caesars. When the restraint of Claudius was removed, the floodgates of state-sponsored persecution opened. Now, this wasn't a future for us. It was the Great Tribulation for them, the fiery trial intended to purify the saints before Christ's coming in judgment against Jerusalem in 70 AD. Additionally, Paul also warns that the day shall not come except there come a falling away first. Now, many interpreters understand this as the definitive rejection of Jesus by national Israel after a period in which the gospel had been faithfully proclaimed to them. Scholar D.A.N. Hayes gave his opinion that historically this apostasy fits a roughly 40-year window between the public ministry of Jesus and the destruction of Jerusalem. And over those decades, Jewish leaders and many who once believed had witnessed the gospel of the kingdom in action and became hardened by the persecution and ultimately rejected the Messiah. Now, that apostasy, this large-scale rejection after a lengthy season of witness, was the context Paul had in view. It helps explain why Paul tells us that the Thessalonians shouldn't be deceived. The final unveiling of wrath and judgment follows both the removal of political restraint and the national falling away that had been allowed to reach its fullness. Now, get this, there's also a spiritual backdrop to this. In Daniel 12:1, it says, Michael shall stand up. While we often think of standing up as rising to fight, the Hebrew word amad can also mean to stand still or cease. It is highly likely that according to God's timing, the angelic protection over the physical nation of Israel ceased, allowing the time of trouble to commence once the servants of God were sealed by the gospel. The removal of the restrainer wasn't the Holy Spirit leaving believers. It was the removal of the legal and angelic protection that preceded the final apostasy of the Jewish nation. Finally, Mark, we have to address the term Antichrist. You won't find that word in the book of Revelation, not once. The only scriptural mentions of Antichrist are in 1st and 2nd John. There it is described not as a single political figure at the end of time, but as a spirit that was already in the world. John says, even now many antichrists have come. It was a spirit of heresy, specifically the denial that Jesus had come in the flesh. To conflate the man of sin in Thessalonians, the beast in Revelation, and the Antichrist in John into one future boogeyman ignores the specific historical and theological context of each writer. The Thessalonians were shaken because they thought they had missed the day of the Lord due to the intensity of their persecution. Paul wasn't giving them a map for 2,000 years in the future. He was giving them a perspective on the storm that they were currently walking through, one that included the withdrawal of political protection, a national apostasy after decades of witness, and the consequent coming of judgment. Mark, this is just the beginning of our conversation. In the next video, we're going to dive deeper into the specifics of the other questions that you have sent to me. Now, I hope this helps you. Please, I pray for everyone who watched. Please comment, put your questions down below. We're almost at 400 subscribers, and I'm delighted. So please, if you have a mind to, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back with the next video shortly.